How's it going, everybody? Welcome to We Do Tech. Now, with Intel's new launch of their 10th generation desktop CPUs, and of course using their new LGA 1200 socket, you are going to have to look for a new motherboard, which is why we're going to take a look at the new ROG Maximus XII formula from ASUS, which is loaded with a ton of features aimed at overclocking. The Maximus XII formula is ASUS's second top-of-the-range board for the new Z490 platform. Now, at the time of filming, the Maximus XII formula is retailing for around $500 or around 13,300 Rand for here in South Africa. Now, when first taking a look at the board, you are greeted with an all-black, kind of minimalistic design, which is complemented with some chrome accents, which does look really flashy. Etched into the PCH cover, there is an ROGI logo, which does look nice and subtle there. Covering the rear I/O, there's also a shroud with the words Maximus 12 on it, with, of course, some RGB lighting. The first thing your eyes will wander towards is, of course, that massive VRMS heatsink designed and collaborated with EK. The design is similar to some of the other boards that they've made before, and of course, if you are into overclocking using a water cooling, then this is something that you might want to check out. Now, included is also a QLED code readout for your postcodes, along with the integrated OLED display just under the CPU socket. The OLED display is nice and bright, improving readability in a brightly lit environments. When booting, the motherboard does display diagnostics and the boot device information on the LED display. This includes memory, hard drive, your CPU checks, with any other faults that prevented the system from booting up. As for power delivery, you do have your standard 24-pin for your motherboard power, and then your 8 plus 4-pin CPU power, which does supply up to 70 amps of power for your CPU to ensure that you have enough power for your overclocking. Now, as for the VRM design, you do have a 12-phase VRM setup, featuring the Infineon TDA214072 optimal power stage MOSFETs and Japanese black metallic capacitors to ensure the CPU does receive a stable voltage. Each MOSFET has an integrated functionality to measure current and temperature, with a new current sensing algorithm coupled with the temperature compensation thanks to the built-in temperature sensors that achieves an exceptional current measuring accuracy, overtaking the current employed based in a class control based methods. As for operating temperatures for the VRMs, they do range from -40 all the way upwards to 125, and they also incorporate fail-safe such as cycle by cycle over current protection and also thermal shutdown for overheating. We will get into some of the thermal benchmarks a bit later on in the review. To keep temperatures under control is the Cross-Chill EK3 from EKW that makes use of copper heat exchange with heat pipes running underneath the covers to cool all of your components surrounding the CPU. At the top and left of the socket, the Cross-Air Chill has 2 ports to allow integration with the liquid cooling loop for enhanced cooling efficiency. Yet again, if you want to go water cooling, then this is a very nice feature. Not only will your CPU be able to water cool, but your VRMs as well, keeping temperatures nice and low, even with extremely high overclocks. Now, the motherboard is equipped with Intel's new LGA 1200 socket, supporting the new 10th generation processors, with also the new thermal velocity boost feature. But of course, being that this motherboard is designed for more overclocking, you are possibly just going to use a manual overclock to push past the limit of that feature and get the most out of the CPU and this board. The ROG Maximus XII formula does not support previous generation of Intel CPUs. It's unfortunately only the new 10th generation version, so you will most likely just go for something like the i7, which we are going to take a look at, or maybe even the i9. Now, as for memory, you do have a total of 4 DDR4 DIMM slots that support a maximum capacity of 128 gigs at a top speed of 4800 megahertz. An additional feature is the ASUS Optimum 3 that reduces crosstalk between your DIMMs and then improves memory performance. Now, Intel is still holding on to the PCI Express 3.0 standard. We're not at PCI Express 4.0 yet for Intel, but on the Formula 12, there is a total of 3 full-size 16x slots, with 2 running at full 16x speed with NVIDIA SLI and Crossfire enabled, while the third full-size slot is only limited to a maximum of 4x speeds. So for any additional add-on cards or maybe even your SSDs, that's going to be perfect for them. All of these slots does feature ASUS's safe slot design that increases the lifespan and durability of the slots, especially if you are planning to go for one of these very big boy graphics cards, which can get quite a bit heavy. Then finally, you do also have a very lonely 1x slot for some additional add-on cards that you might want to add. Now, as for storage, ASUS has provided more than enough options here. There's a total of 3 M.2 slots with a support for NVMe, Intel Optane, and also a SATA, along with 6 SATA 6GB ports. Now, some important things to take note of are that the PCI Express slot 1 and the M.2 slot 1 does share a bandwidth, with the M.2 slot running at only 2 times speed if the PCI Express 1 slot is occupied. But when running in SATA mode, the SATA port 2 will also then be disabled. But also, of course, all of that is in the manual, so if you just want to check that out, you can as well once you have the board. Now, the Maximus 12 formula does include support for PCI Express bifabrication for a RAID and also CPU functions by using their Hyper M.2 series PCI Express card. So just a nice feature there. Then take a look on the side for your I/O. You are greeted with a very nice integrated I/O shield, which I honestly do love, and I again hope that more and more motherboards do come out with these. On the side, you are greeted with a clear CMOS and a BIOS flashback buttons, a total of 6 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, a PS2 keyboard and mouse combo port, which is still being used apparently, 4 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, 3 of them being Type A and 1 of them being Type C. Then for your networking, you are greeted with a 10 gigabit port plus an additional 2.5 gigabit port, and for Wi-Fi, you do have Wi-Fi 6 that is also integrated with a Bluetooth 5.1. Now for your audio connections, you do have your standard surround sound connections with 1 SPDIF optical out port. The audio codec being used is the high definition audio codec S1220 with 7.1 surround sound. If you are planning to use some high grade headsets, these do supply enough power to power those as well. Now moving on to some additional connections, you are spoiled with plenty of additional connections on the board. There is 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 header, 4 USB 3.2 Gen 1 headers, 4 also USB 2.0 headers, and then a 1 Thunderbolt 3 header. With a total of 11 headers for cooling, the different options for cooling is also greatly increased for all of your fans and also for your water cooling options. RGB is also handled by 2 Aura Gen 2 addressable RGB headers and 2 12-volt standard RGB headers. All of them, of course, working with ASUS's and Aura Sync for all of your other components like your graphics card, your motherboard again, and then some of your peripherals if you want to connect all of those together. And finally, you also have the on-board start button, which is pretty handy if you want to start the system while it's on a test bench. The multi-purpose flex key button that can be used to configure to perform different functions, with the default being that the settings will be resetted. The final is the retry button aimed to overclockers to force your system to reboot while keeping the same settings. Then next up, let's quickly take a look at the BIOS, because there's probably going to be a big chance that you're probably going to spend some time applying all of your overclocks. The BIOS does look very similar to some of the other ROG motherboards from ASUS, so navigating is quite easy, especially if you have used it before. And there's also an assistant mode for most of the BIOS functions. This does make it easy for some of the more novice users who just wants to change a few things here and there. For more of the experienced users, ASUS also does not disappoint. You'll find everything you need to make minute tweaks and adjustments to every aspect of the system, allowing you to monitor temperatures, voltages, and adjust the parameters as needed when pushing for that highest and stable overclocks. Then moving on to the benchmarks, to test the effectiveness of the cooler and the design of the VRMs, we used IDA64 stress test and tested for a duration of 30 minutes. The results were that at stock settings with all core enhancement disabled, we had an idle temperature where it was sitting at around 27 degrees after 30 minutes, and a max temperature recorded was 35 degrees. Using the inbuilt ASUS utility, that resulted in a 5.3 GHz overclock on 3 cores, a 5.1 GHz overclock on 6 cores, and then a 4.9 GHz on all cores. We had an ideal temperature sitting at 34 degrees, and at full load we peaked at 46 degrees. The final test was on a manual overclock of 5.2 GHz on all cores with a voltage of 1.4 volts. Idle temperatures were at 34 degrees, a small increase over the auto overclock, but the maximum temperatures peaked at 53 degrees. Now we also ran some Cinebench R15 and R20 benchmarks to test out the CPU with our overclocks on the stock setting, scoring 1,973 points in R15 and 4,866 points in Cinebench. Finally, we used our manual overclock again at 5.2 GHz on all cores, and we had a score of 2,154 on R15 and 5,130 in R20. This result was a 9 to 10% increase over the stock settings. So then in conclusion, this board is just built to last. Now looking back on the test results, you are far more likely to run into processor thermal headroom issues than anything before the motherboard's components like the VRMs. We didn't even get close, more than even half of what the max of the VRMs can handle. So that is honestly not going to be a problem. You have all of your needed connections, everything there. Now I will say, if you are possibly going to get this board, of course, just pair it up with the new i9 rather than the i7. Because it's also pretty much more expensive than the i7 as well, this board. So if you want to go for that, I would say go for the i9. You're just going to get a lot more out of that, and that is actually going to push this board to where it should actually be. And again, your VRMs will even be fine on the i9. But that's pretty much it for our review. A big thanks to ASUS South Africa for sending this board over for a review. If you guys liked it, please like, share, comment like always. I will also leave links in the video description if you guys want to get it for yourself. And then I will check all of you guys next time. Cheers, guys.